Listen, I consider myself a bit of a modern male, you know what I mean? I'm pretty accepting, I'm pretty open, alright? So if you think I'm gonna run a monocolor deck, you're crazy. If you think I'm not gonna run multicolor, you're crazy. Except for when I used to play Standard. I used to play White Weenie back in Standard. That was my shit, loved that. But that was my Standard days, you know? I play Commander now. I'm looking for a little bit more of a unique build in terms of my decks. So it's really gonna have to take some unique monocolored commanders for me to want to build them. You know, if my white's gonna be white and my blue's gonna be blueing and so on and so forth, I'm not really that into it. That's why I find multicolor so enticing, because even with Taval, it's like Sultai doing graveyard stuff. Yeah, that's very obvious. You'd think I wouldn't like that, but since it's multicolor, I can find blue cards that do graveyard stuff instead of black. I can run green cards that do graveyard stuff. I can run black cards that do self-mill and surveilling stuff. I don't know, it makes it a little bit easier to approach it from a creative angle. But after plenty of live streams with you guys telling me, build a monocolor deck, I think you'd really like monocolor. I made it a goal of mine to find 5 monocolor decks, one for each color, that I genuinely find interesting enough that I'm considering building, okay? So you guys drop comments on which one you think I should pull the trigger on. I have one I want to vote on. I'll tell you at the end. So yeah, that's what's on the menu today. We're gonna look at some monocolor decks that I actually find incredibly unique and interesting enough to build myself. So if that sounds interesting, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you want to show some additional support, become a member on YouTube or Patreon for as low as $1. Let's get into it. Let's start things off with my stomping grounds back in Standard, Mono White. Mono White. Now, swimming through the pool of monocolored legendaries and looking for an interesting white one was definitely a challenge because I was not interested in any of like the life gain ones. I really wasn't interested in any of like the token ones. But then we did a live stream where I was looking for a third commander. We were clicking through random legendaries and I came across Kataki War's Wage, which I really like. Let me tell you that this Kataki mushroom and Swiss burger is oh so juicy and oh so unique compared to a lot of other mono white commanders you could run. For 1 and a white, we get a 2/1. All artifacts have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 1. They all have little built-in self-destructs unless you pay a mana. In a world full of treasure, clues, food, blood, I think it's pretty safe to say that just passively, Kataki's going to be fairly annoying on the board. Now, most people take Kataki and they go, let's put as many white stacks pieces in this deck as I can and call it a day. Let's just run a stack. No. We took this deck a completely different route, okay? So we run tons of small artifacts with good death triggers. So we run stuff like Circuit Mender. When it leaves the battlefield, we draw a card. Filigree Familiar. When it dies, we draw a card. Ichor Wellspring, when it ETBs or dies, draw a card. Junk Diver, when it dies, return an artifact from our graveyard to our hand. Lembas will draw us a card when it enters the battlefield, as well as scry us a card, and when it dies, we just shuffle it back. Mycosync Wellspring, Mirror Retriever, Origin Spellbomb, Prize Statue. You get the idea. We're running tons of small artifacts with death triggers. If there's just a small artifact that you like that has a death trigger, throw it in here. Honestly, it's pick your fancy. And while we are threatening to put a self-destruct button on everyone's artifacts, getting tons of value from our artifacts leaving, we're probably going to want to put up a Feather Fortress, if you will. A Linen Line of Defense. We're going to want to run some Pillow Fort cards, all right? We got Crawl Space to make it so only 2 creatures can attack on combat. Ghostly Prison makes every creature have to pay 2 to attack us. Mangara turns every 2 creatures that attacks us into a card draw. Maze of Ith and Mystifying Maze are 2 lands that can shut off attacking creatures. We love that. Nils can put counters on stuff and make anything with a counter have to pay mana equal to the number of counters on it to attack us. Norn Xenix, Windborn Muse, again, pay a cost or don't attack us, scrub. We also run 3 spells that will return all of our artifacts from our graveyard, those being Open the Vaults, Redress Fate, and Second Sunrise. Second Sunrise acting a little different as it returns all artifacts that were put into the graveyard this turn. So if we have a bunch of artifacts, let them all crack on one turn, play Second Sunrise, let them all ETB again. As well as Tashar, turning every historic spell we cast into a return on a 3 or less permanent into play. So with all the small artifacts, yeah, this is going to chain a ton. We also run Mycosynth Lattice to turn everything into an artifact because eat a fat huge hog, as well as Liquid Metal Coating and Liquid Metal Torque, which can both turn permanents into artifacts. which paired with our commander can be pretty annoying. Of course, we run Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, want to keep our commander safe here. And while we're getting all of these nickel and dime value out of all of our artifacts, playing tons of Pillow Fort cards, we win with like Heliod and Triskelion to like combo off on somebody, or we can win with like Approach of the Second Sun, just sit behind our fort. Super interesting build. I actually like this deck a lot. Again, for being a mono white deck, this is a super interesting take. No way in hell we're taking the stacks route on this one. Here's a look at this deck's card draw, mana ramp, removal, and board interaction, as well as the mana base. Also, here's a look at 3 opening hands in the deck, just to see if you have a interest in building it yourself. Like always, links to all the decks we're going to talk about today can be found with the Moxfield link down below. And with that, let's move on to the blue deck for today. Octavia the Living Thesis. Ooh. Where you been at, girl? As much as this commander sounds like a fiber supplement, Octavia is a fantastic mono blue commander and a really unique take on a mono blue commander. For 8 and 2 blue, we get an 8/8 that cost 8 less to cast as long as there are 8 or more instants and sorceries in your graveyard. It has Ward 8, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, target creature becomes an 8/8. The deck runs plenty of cantrips because those are a great way to not only filter through our deck, also to get a ton of instants and sorceries in our graveyard. What's not to like? And can also be used late game to trigger Octavia to turn other stuff into 8/8s. Yeah, they're pretty good. Got stuff like Consider, Curate, Brainstorm, Opt, Ponder, Preordain, Slip Through Space, Thought Scour. These 1-drop instants and sorceries are going to replace themselves with card draw, as well as put themselves in the grave, and in the case of Thought Scour, mill 2 additional cards from our library, because we're probably going to use it on ourselves to get out Octavia as fast as possible. We also run a package of self-mill cards that can help us put instants and sorceries in the graveyard to guarantee we hit 8 instants and sorceries in the graveyard for Octavia as fast as possible. We got Diviner of Mist, which whenever it attacks will mill 4 cards and cast an instant or sorcery with mana value 4 or less, keeping the other 3 in the graveyard, letting you cast an instant or sorcery for free. That seems good. Fact or Fiction, look at our top 5. Opponent separates them. 1 pile goes to hand, the other goes to grave. Frantic Search to draw and discard. Ghostly Pilferer for a discard outlet. Hedron Crab turns every land we play into target player milling 3 cards. We can pick ourselves to get Octavia out very quickly. Ledger Shredder turns every second spell into a Connive. Millikin is a mana ramp that also mills us a card. And Search for Azcanta is an enchantment that will steadily mill 1 card off our library on our upkeep and flip into a pseudo tutor that searches for non-creature, non-land cards, which, yeah, we'll take that. Now, we've got ways to get Octavia out early. We've got ways to trigger Octavia to turn things into 8/8s. What are we going to be turning into 8/8s? Well, part of it is early game, highly evasive creatures. So, Blighted Agent, a 1/1 unblockable infect that we can turn into an 8/8. Yeah, it's kind of like WinCon. Deceptive Frostkite is a 2/2 flying, is a 1/1 flying, so just on its own can turn into an 8/8 flying. Also can copy stuff with power 4 or greater. Sure. Emrakul's Messenger has flying. Ghostly Pilferer can be unblockable. Invisible Stalker has Shroud and unblockable. Nuts. Ledger Shredder has flying. Mercurial Spelldancer has unblockable. Plus it can start copying instants and sorceries we play, which is super nice. Mistcloak Herald is unblockable. Picklack Prankster has flying. Shoreline Looter unblockable. Silent Hall Creeper unblockable. Slither Blade. Triton Shorekeeper unblockable. Wonder gives our whole board flying. Tons of evasion, and with Octavia, turning tons of our creatures into 8/8s. Yeah, that's probably gonna win. But this, my dear viewers, were tons of Octavia brewers completely stopped. They said, this is all we need. We're smacking face for freeski. We're turning stuff into 8/8s for freeski. What else do we need? Aurora Shifter is a 2-drop 1/3 that when it deals combat damage, you create that much energy. So turning it into an 8/8, we get 8 energy, and then paying 2 mana, we can have it become a copy of another creature. Yeah, this thing's gonna be shifting a lot. Cephalid Constable, a 1 and 2 blue 1/1. When it deals combat damage to a player, return up to X permanents that player controls to their hand, where X is the damage dealt. Oh, permanents. Oh, word? 8/8? Bounce 8 permanents whenever this thing connects? Yeah, sure. Drake Hatcher gets incubation counters equal to the damage dealt, and you can remove 3 of them to make a 2/2 Drake. Fear of Failed Test can draw you cards equal to the damage dealt. Glint Raker can look for cards off the top of your library equal to damage dealt. Piper Wright makes you clue tokens equal to the damage dealt. Robe of the Archmagi makes the whoever it's equipped to draw you cards equal to the damage dealt. And Key to the Vault helps whoever it's equipped to dig for cards off the top of your deck. Sure. The deck also runs Murmuring Mystic and Talran Sky Summoner because turning flyers into 8/8s turns out is pretty good. And of course, we got a Rogue's Passage in there. Don't worry. Gotta have that in this list. Outside of that, here's a look at the deck's card draw, mana ramp, removal, and board interaction, as well as the land base. and to look at 3 test hands to see if this is a deck you'd be interested in. Again, links to all these decks we're going to talk about today can be found below. And with that, let's talk about the black deck of the video. All right, I'm going to rip this Band-Aid off, okay? I know I said I don't like when the color does exactly what the color's supposed to do. The mono black deck is built around murdering everything, okay? It's about sending every single creature to the bin. I know, it's pretty cliche. But the commander just does it in such a unique, cool way that I'm like, we gotta talk about it. Tashiro Umezawa being a 1 and 2 black 2/2 with Bushido. The Bushido here is about as useless as me at a party, just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Whenever a creature an opponent controls goes to the bin, we can cast an instant from our graveyard for its mana cost. Then that instant goes to exile. Yeah, whenever anything dies, you get to play another instant from your graveyard. We run 21 pieces of removal in this deck, and I'm gonna kind of machine gun them off to you here. Bio Blight, Heartless Act, Tragic Slip, Consuming Corruption, Curtain Call, Infernal Grasp, Wretched Confluence, Vats, Defile, Slaughter Pact, Bitter Triumph, Hagra's Mauling,
Malicious Affliction, Soul Shatter,
Withered Torment, Vona's Hunger.
You know, I think you guys probably get it. It's 21 instant speed removal spells, because every time we use one to kill something, we can then cast an instant from our graveyard. So another one to kill something, and another one to kill something. We're killing everything, all the time. We're sending everything to the bin all the time. We can use one instant to send a creature to the bin, which will let us cast another instant, which we can use to send a creature to the bin. And I don't really have to keep repeating this. It's busted. What are we going to do with that? Outside of just not making any creature stick on anyone's board, really nothing's going to stick here. There's a couple other necessities for the deck. Now, you don't even have to be a betting man, all right? I bet you could guess this commander's going to get hated off the table immediately. So we run Supernatural Stamina, Undying Evil, Undying Malice, Not Dead at All, Feign Death, and Malakir Rebirth, which are all 1 black instants that make it so the next time a creature dies, it comes back into play. So if anyone's trying to remove our commander, at least through destruction, board wipes, combat, anything like that, fighting, we have plenty of instants to cast on our commander, save our commander, and guess what? Whenever an opponent's creature dies, we can cast another one of those instants that saves our commander. So if we use Feign Death to protect our commander, pass to someone, they try to kill our commander again. In response, we drop a Go for the Throat to remove one of their creatures, triggers our Tashiro to let us cast an instant from our graveyard. We cast the Feign Death again. Eat a hog. I don't know what else to tell you. Of course, Swiftfoot Boots, Lightning Greaves, those are in here. Gotta protect Tashiro. Gotta make sure that Bushido's working. We've also got Arcane Lighthouse and the Spotlight or the Searchlight. I can't remember what the name of the card is. The 1-drop artifact that removes Hexproof and Shroud from opponent's stuff, and the land that removes Hexproof and Shroud, because we're trying to send stuff to the bin. And if you got Hexproof or Shroud, really, dude? Like seriously? Did you not think that my Tashiro deck was gonna try to remove stuff, so you come sitting here with Hexproof and Shroud, dude? How about a Nowhere to Run? How about a Nowhere to Run, dude? More removal. It's not instant speed, but it turns off your ward, turns off your hexproof. Sorry. How about an Isochron Scepter? Because I'm like a total scumbag. Throw a 2-drop or less instant underneath it and then keep copying it for 2? We might be able to find something in the deck to do that. I'm not sure if we have it, but we might be able to find something. Of course, we've got Limdol the Necromancer and Grave Betrayal, turning opponents' creatures hitting the bin into those creatures coming into play under our control. And in this deck, that's just, you get to cherry pick the best creatures in play to come into play under our control. Pretty much win cons in this deck. I also put Thrilling Encore in here. It's just like good. I didn't really have like a category to put it under. You just 4 and a black instant get to return all creatures that were put into the graveyard under your control. I mean, yeah, dude, pair that with some of our board wipes we run in the deck, if anyone else board wipes, plus it's an instant. Pretty busted. We've also got like a small spell trigger package. We've got Kervek the Punisher, turning whenever we commit a crime, so whenever we remove a creature. We get to exile a black card from our graveyard whenever we commit a crime, and then cast it until end of turn, a copy of it. Oh, okay, so just another one of our commanders. That seems useful. Sedgemoor Witch has Magecraft and turns those spells we cast into Pest, so good chum blockers. And Professor Onyx, being a Planeswalker, it's got some very powerful built-in abilities. The main thing here is Magecraft whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. Each opponent loses 2 and we gain 2. Yeah, that's going to be pretty good at bringing home games. Outside of that, here's a look at the deck's card draw, a look at the deck's mana ramp, another look at the 21 pieces of removal the deck runs, as well as the deck's board interaction and land base. Plus a look at 3 starter hands to see if you'd be interested in picking the deck up. Again, like all the decks we're going to talk about today, you can find these decks down below at the Moxfield link. And with that, let's move on to the red deck of the video. Can I tell you guys a secret? I actually want to build this red deck. And not only is it monocolor, it's my least favorite color in the game. So that's a really big deal. Let's talk about it. Our mono red commander for the day is Haragast Erupting Nullkite. And I'm not gonna lie, dude, I really like this commander. For 9 colorless mana, it's a 6/6 with Emerge, 6 and 2 red. If you don't know what Emerge is, you can cast the creature with Emerge for its Emerge cost by sacrificing 1 creature and subtracting that creature you sacrificed mana cost from the Emerge cost. So, this being Emerge for 6 and 2 red, if I sack a 5-drop, this will be a 3-drop commander. It's pretty good. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. It's got flying, and each creature card in your hand has Emerge, and the Emerge cost is equal to its mana cost. Oh, that's really, really fun. Okay, so if you look at this deck online, like on EDHREC, people read this card, went Eldrazi Dragon. What? That's so freaking cool. Let's just make it an Eldrazi deck and have no fun with it at all. Looking ass, dude. I get it, all right? Like, having Eldrazi's with Emerge is good because you can, like, crack stuff, make Eldrazi's cost like nothing. I'm even running a couple of Eldrazi's in here, okay? I'm just saying, there's a lot of really fun, cool stuff you can do with this commander that I'm not seeing online that I really, really like, and I want to talk about it. So let's do that. So, the one place that me and the decks online lined up was early game creatures that we can sack that have good leave the battlefield triggers or death triggers that will not only help us cast our commander with the Emerge cost, but once our commander's in play, will further help us cast some bigger creatures we'll talk about in a little bit. Atsushi the Blazing Sky, this is fantastic, being a 4-drop 4/4 flying trample with a death trigger of creating 3 treasure tokens. It's also got like the exile, the top, what is it, 2 or 3? Top 2, you can play them. That's not bad, but like creating 3 treasure tokens and then stacking a 4-drop to Emerge, that's a total of 7 mana being produced. That's really good in this deck. Enduring Courage, again, sacking this to Emerge. It's a 4-drop. It'll come back thanks to its triggered ability as an enchantment, so no harm, no foul. Heat Shimmer can make copies of some of the bigger creatures we'll play late game that we can then sack to Emerge and then play more big creatures, which is really nice. We've also got stuff like Impulsive Pilferer and Patron of the Arts, which are smaller early game creatures that either create treasures on ETB or death, in the case of Patron of the Arts, both. Priest of Urbrask, which creates 3 red when you play it, so it replaces itself, and it's also a 3-drop that we could sack to Emerge. Oxidin Golem being a 8-drop 3/2, which isn't great, but it's got affinity for mountains, so in a mono red deck, this is going to come out for very cheap and then be an 8-drop that we can Emerge into other stuff. Ryusi the Falling Star, while also being something that is nice to Emerge because it's got a solid death trigger of dealing 5 damage to everything without flying, and our commander has flying. It's also one of the big boys that we're trying to cheat into play with some of our other Emerge, so you can see how this can start chaining into a lot of damage, a lot of value. Pretty nice. The deck also runs Sarkhan's Unsealing to turn every spell we cast that's 4, 5, or 6 mana into 4 damage to any target, and any spell we cast that costs 7 or greater into 4 damage to each opponent and each creature they control, which, yeah, insanely good in this deck. Of course, we've got Stalking Vengeance and Warstorm Surge as well to provide pings for creatures' power when they hit board, and with the big creatures we're going to be emerging, these are both really good. Speaking of which, let's talk about the big creatures we're going to be emerging. Honestly, these are just to taste. Like, whatever your favorite big creatures are that could fit in this deck, put them in. They're going to emerge for pretty cheap. In this list specifically, we've got stuff like Blightsteel Colossus to provide a giant infect win-con, Cityscape Leveler to be a giant 8/8 trample removal piece, Atali Primal Storm to start casting stuff for free, Meteor Golem being a removal piece, Platinum Angel preventing us from losing, Ulamog the Defiler just being, like, read that thing, exile half a library, +X equal to the biggest thing, Annihilator equal to the biggest CMC. It's disgusting. So I definitely get the intrigue with Eldrazi's, but there's other cool stuff, as you can see. We've also got a small death triggers package in Hissing Iguanar, Spiteful Prankster, and Rage Thrower, which all turn creatures dying on our side into damage to opponents, which, with all of the emerging happening, these can be very, very useful. But let's get really spicy, okay? So let's talk about Persist. A creature with Persist, if it dies and it didn't have a -1/-1 counter on it, return it with a -1/-1 counter on it. We've got Cauldron of Souls, which we can tap to choose any number of creatures and give them persist. And when you're emerging, those creatures coming back after they die is really, really good. Fury Stoke Giant being a 5-drop with persist. We really don't even care about the ability. It lets our creatures tap to deal 2 damage. Honestly, could be useful in some games, but the fact that it's a 5-drop we can emerge that will just immediately come back as another 5-drop to emerge, very, very good. As well as Thunderblust being the same thing, a 5-drop to emerge that has persist that will immediately bring itself back if it doesn't have a -1/-1, and we can just use it to emerge again, playing tons of threats. Now, I know what you're saying. Nick, you're going to talk about persist, but you're not going to talk about Undying? Oh, we're going to talk about Undying, all right? Flayer of the Hatebound. I grossly misread this card on my deck ideas video. Sorry about that. It's really good. Whenever creatures enter from the graveyard, they deal damage equal to their power to any target. And with our persist creatures and our Undying creatures, this can be good. It's also a 6-drop with Undying. Again, being able to emerge a 6-drop, reduce the cost of the creature we're playing by 6, it immediately comes back as another 6-drop to emerge. Yeah, same idea with Gleeful Arsonist being a 3-drop, Hound of the Gristlebrand being a 4-drop, and Pyreheart Wolf being a 3-drop. All very, very good emerge targets because they'll immediately come back and be used again to emerge. And not to mention with like the aforementioned like Stalking Vengeance and Warstorm Surge, these are incredibly good in here. Man, I like that deck, man. It's red, and it's so weird for me to be like, I like a red deck. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Do you like the red deck? I'm like, I don't know. I might. I don't know. It's fun, man. This feels not red, and I love it. Here's a look at the decks: mana ramp, card draw, removal, and board interaction, as well as, of course, the land base. And a look at 3 test opening hands to see if you guys would be interested in building it or playing it. Again, all the decks we're going to talk about today can be found down below with the Moxfield links. And with that, let's move on to our final mono green deck of the video. Let's talk about Yasan the Wander Bard. For 2 and a green, we get a 2/3 that we can pay 2 and a green and tap to put a verse counter on it, and then search our library for a creature with mana cost equal to the number of verse counters on it and put it into play. Yeah, it's like a pod deck, but like you don't have to sack the stuff, and it just like keeps kind of going, you know? You can kind of plug in whatever style of deck you want here, whatever you want to be potting into. This specific list is a 1/1 counter deck that is incredibly powerful. I'm going to hop off the screen for a second so I can show you some of the lines because I think it's actually really interesting. So seeing how the first activation of Yasan will give us 1 verse counter and then tutor us up a 1-drop, you can go 2 different routes here. You can either tutor up Mold Adder, Set's Chocobo, or Scute Swarm, which are all creatures that will provide themselves with a steady stream of 1/1 counters, becoming mid and late game threats. Or you can tutor up a District Mascot if you're against a deck with a lot of artifacts and you're suspecting you may need the artifact removal. As far as 2-drops are concerned, we can go 2 routes here as well. We can either tutor up Gyre Sage or Incubation Druid, which can both provide 1/1 counters for themselves and provide mana equal to the number of counters they've given themselves. Or we can just go Pollen Bright Druid, being a 2-drop 1/1 that'll just straight up put a 1/1 counter on a creature we control, or Proliferate. So depending on the board state, maybe you've played Yasan later in the game and you're searching for a 2-drop, the Proliferate might be useful here. Moving on to Yasan's 3rd activation, searching for a 3-drop creature, we've got tons of powerhouses that we can choose from here. We've got Champion of Lampbolt, providing 1/1 counters for itself whenever a creature ETBs, as well as making it so any creatures with lower power than Champion of Lampbolt our opponents control can't block. Kami of Whispered Hopes provides additional 1/1 counters whenever we put 1/1 counters on stuff, as well as tapping for mana equal to its power. Mana Gorger Hydra is a trampler that will provide 1/1 counters whenever a player casts a spell, becoming a serious issue super quickly. Ornery Tumblewag is a mount that will provide 1/1 counters to it or another creature and then double those 1/1 counters if it saddled it, which again, very useful. Or you can search for Rishkar, Prima Renegade, who will provide a 1/1 counter to another creature and provide the static ability of any creature we have with a counter on it can tap for 1 green, which in a mono green deck, who would have guessed? Pretty good. As far as 4-drops are concerned, you can either search for Kazur or Forgotten Ancient. Kazur providing 1/1 counters for more of a wide board state, and Forgotten Ancient providing 1/1 counters for itself. As far as 5-drops are concerned, we can either search for Defiler of Vigor or Colonial Hydra, both being extremely powerful bombs. Defiler making our green permanents cost 1 green less, and whenever we cast a green permanent, we put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. Yeah, that's gonna win some games. And Colonial Hydra entering with 4 1/1 counters as a trampler that will double its counters when it attacks. Again, that has potential to end a game. And finally, on the 6th activation of Yasan, ending this little chain we have in this deck, we can either tutor up Bane of Progress or Sirach the Goreclaw. Bane of Progress, wiping all artifacts and enchantments off the board, and with our line, we really don't have a ton of those, and getting a 1/1 counter for each card wiped this way, or Sirach the Goreclaw, providing a 1/1 counter and haste to any creatures we play. Again, that could definitely be helping us win the game in this deck. We've also got a small 2, 3, and 4 drop Proliferate line, so if you are going really wide, you find yourself rushing out a lot of small creatures early game in some of your games, you might just want to tutor up a Proliferate card to just help distribute the 1/1 counters evenly among your whole board. We've got stuff like Canker Bloom, Adaptive Spore Singer, Evolutionary Sage, Park Heights Maverick, Surge Conductor, and Bloom Hulk. Again, if you're on one of these Yasan triggers where you can tutor one of these up and your board state calls for it, these are also really powerful in a 1/1 counter deck. Obviously, being able to use Yasan multiple times on a turn is just turning the speed of this deck up, which is obviously going to be strong. So Kyrian Ranger and Scribe Ranger will both let us return Forest to our hands to untap a creature, activate once a turn. So just an additional use of Yasan for returning a Forest. That's fine. We really don't need the Forest anyway. We're playing most of our stuff for free. Benefactor's Drought is extremely good, making it so whenever another creature an opponent controls blocks this turn, we draw a card. That's really good. It also untaps all of our creatures and lets us draw a card. So in this deck, we're using it for another Yasan trigger, but in certain case scenarios, we could use it to draw some cards. Of course, we've got 1,000-Year Elixir, just the classic use your commander again card. Of course, we've got Birthing Pod, as it acts just kind of like a second commander. You can just have these both firing off on 2 separate lines. That seems really good. One of the best cards in the entire deck, Tamir Sabertooth, because once we get to the end of our line, we can just use Tamir Sabertooth to bounce Yasan back to our hand, play it again, and then restart another line and go through it. And really just play tons of 1/1 counters and have a beefy ass board, if we're being honest. Of course, we got Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots. We want to protect Yasan. We want to use them right away. Those are both great. And the last thing I want to talk about here before we finish up this video, there's a small 4-card package we run that can manipulate the amount of counters on Yasan, which actually can be really powerful. So stuff like Power Conduit, you can tap to remove a counter from something we control to, what does it do? Like put a 1/1 counter on something? Sure. Oh, actually, yeah, that's actually really good in this deck. You can activate Yasan for 3, maybe get that Rich Car because you need mana ramp, but maybe next turn you think, oh, I could really use Champion of Lampol, but if I use Yasan, I'm tutoring up a 4-drop. Champion of Lampol cost 3. You could use your Power Circuit to tap, remove a verse counter from Yasan, tap him to put a 3rd counter on it again, tutor up Champion of Lampol. So that's a really fun interaction. We've also got Phuropede, Dramatist Puppet, I think that's how you say that, and Quarry Hauler, which can all remove counters from our creatures as well during combat. So again, you can utilize this to remove counters from Yasan and tutor up specific cost a 2nd time. But outside of that, here's a look at the deck's mana ramp, the deck's card draw, the deck's removal, as well as the deck's board interaction, as well as, of course, the deck's land base. Plus, a look at 3 starter hands to see if you'd be interested in building or playing this deck. You can find all 5 decks we talked about today down below with the Moxfield links in the description and the comments. If you want to like, comment, and subscribe, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't care. We're trying to hit 20K. That would help. If you'd like to show some additional support to the channel and submit some of your favorite obscure cards and your deck list for Friday Night Deck Review live streams here on the channel, you could become a Patreon or YouTube member for as low as $1. Helps me out a ton. Anyway, appreciate you guys checking out the video. Appreciate all the patrons that you see and scrolling past my ugly mug. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.